Welcome, everyone, to another episode of What in the World is Happening, the show about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom. I'm Sabina Qureshi, broadcasting from Edmonton, Canada, and with me today is Dick Larson in Los Angeles, California. Hi, Dick.
Hi.
Nice to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
We broadcast live every second and fourth Saturday of the month on Zoom, Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitch. At the end of each show, we do a 30-minute transmission meditation. It's a group meditation open to everyone over the age of 12. It's free, it's very powerful, and we hope that you'll stick around and join us. You might like it. And the topic for today's show is an ageless wisdom perspective on 9/11. And today is, of course, September 11th. And there are commemorations being held all over the world. And we want to talk about the possibilities for a lasting peace, as unlikely as that might seem when you think about this disaster. So it's really perhaps a very different approach to this event than what you may have seen before in the media. And so we invite you to join us as we take this journey. What is the ageless wisdom? And how do we know about it? Dick, do you want to dive in?
Well, the ageless wisdom, we'll start with that part first. The ageless wisdom is an ancient philosophy, but it's a living philosophy. It's been with humanity over the ages, over the eons, and it's basically about what life is all about. And that's all levels of life, from the mineral kingdom to the spiritual kingdom. And the Ageless Wisdom teachings give us suggestions on how to get more joy out of life and how better to live life according to the plan. The latest teachers of the Ageless Wisdom, that's how we know about it. The latest teachers were Alice A. Bailey and a man named Benjamin Creme, who both Sabina and I knew. Benjamin Creme was from London and traveled the world for almost 40 years without pay, giving out the information of the Ageless Wisdom teachings, the latest update of the Ageless Wisdom teachings. So we are going to talk about 9/11 from the point of view of the Ageless Wisdom today.
And we call it ageless because it's a teaching that underpins all of the great religions, all of the traditions that we know of. And the word ageless for us means that it's been around as long as humanity has been around. So right. It's very, very old. And in every cycle of civilization, it's expressed perhaps differently in each religion. So you'll find the same essential teachings in all of the religions of the world. And perhaps the simplest one, which we're all familiar with, is the Golden Rule, to treat others as we would wish to be treated. And you'll find that in all the great traditions as well. Right. So yeah, the Ageless Wisdom teaching is something that is for all of us, whether we have a religion, whether we're religious or not, regardless of which religion we may feel we're drawn to or we practice. It's a teaching for all humanity. And you, Dick, mentioned the plan briefly. Can you just give us a little more about that? Which plan are you referring to?
The plan of evolution for planet Earth. There is a plan, although we can't really understand it at this point. We can understand little parts of it. Like part of our, according to the Ageless Wisdom, part of our goal in being here on life, part of our purpose is to learn and grow. And it's by learning and growing that we each evolve and that humanity as a group evolves and increases our level of consciousness. So the plan includes, though, the whole planet. I mean, there's the mineral kingdom, which feeds the plant kingdom, which feeds the animal kingdom, which feeds the human kingdom. And then the human kingdom ultimately ends up being the spiritual kingdom. So all of these levels of life on the planet are evolving and growing. And that's the part we want to participate in. Benjamin Creme said that the royal road to evolutionary growth is meditation and service. Now, meditation isn't for everybody. You won't know till you try it, but it isn't for everybody. But service is one of the big parts of evolving. And so that's part of the plan,
Now,
as we understand it.
Pardon?
As we understand it.
Right. And now you talked about these different levels, these different kingdoms, and how
Yes.
they feed into each other. And you mentioned the spiritual kingdom as well. So we're going to talk about that next. And just to preface it, we want to say that the fundamental teaching in the Ageless Wisdom is that all life is divine. And that's everything, absolutely everything, not just human beings, all forms of life are divine. The same divine spark is expressing itself through all forms, including the mineral kingdom, though you might not think that, but this is what this teaching tells us.
Well, yeah, the mineral kingdom serves the plant kingdom. So that's service,
Right.
and see the Ageless Wisdom tells us that the nature of the soul is to serve. So once you become aware that you're a living soul, you start looking for ways to help other people. Now, you might think, well, it doesn't look like everybody's divine. Everybody isn't acting divine. Everybody isn't acting sacred. Well, that's because we're all at different levels of evolving. So there are some of us that are acting more divine than others because they're more evolved than others. We all have that quality in us. Our evolutionary level determines our ability to express that divinity into the world. So we're all working on it. We're all working on expressing the divine being that we actually are.
Yeah, and I often think of it like being a violinist. You can see many different levels of ability in playing the instrument. But in terms of musicality and sensitivity, that will be there in a person regardless of their technical ability. And the technical ability grows as you do it more. So in a way, we all have that same potential within us, and we're just in the process of learning how to express it.
Right.
And so we talk about the masters of wisdom. Now, these are people like ourselves who've gone further ahead on this path of evolution, so that the divinity in them is more fully expressed than it is in ourselves. And so they form the spiritual kingdom. And we talk about them also as spiritual hierarchy, or the Lords of Compassion. Lords of Compassion because they've experienced everything that we go through, everything that it's possible to go through as a human being on the earth. So they have an infinite compassion for us because they know what we're going through. There is never any judgment on their part towards us.
Sabina, if I may, the masters of the wisdom are the senior members of the spiritual kingdom. There are many other members, obviously, of the spiritual kingdom. These are the senior members who have taken and accepted the responsibility of helping to guide humanity during our process of evolution, during our growth here on planet Earth. So they are, as Sabina said, perfected men and women who have gone through evolution ahead of us and have become spirits, spiritual giants. We're all going to end up there. It's just a matter of working our way up to where they have already reached. So when you reach this point, there's no point in taking a body anymore on the planet because you have learned all the lessons that planet Earth has to teach. You've become a perfected human being, and then that's when you become a master of the wisdom and don't need to have a body on the planet anymore to learn the next lessons. They're called masters. This is an important point. They're called masters not because they're masters over us. They're called masters because they're masters over themselves. They have their soul, their spirit, their divinity has taken charge of all of their being, and all of their being works to express their divinity, their holiness, their sacredness, their love. And so their job is to help administer the plan of evolution. Each master has a piece of the pie. Each master has part of the plan of evolution that he or she, they don't have a sex, are responsible for administering. And they also work with all the energies, not just planetary energies, but cosmic energies that enter our solar system and enter our planet. They work with all of those. They have the ability to do that because everything is energy. There's nothing but energy if you break it all down. So those are the masters of wisdom. They're the senior members of the spiritual kingdom, and it's their time now to come forward and walk amongst humanity. That's part of their evolutionary path. And so they are going to do that, but before they do that, their leader is going to appear first. And their leader is a man by the name, a master by the name of the Lord Maitreya. Maitreya is Sanskrit. It means the one who brings joy. And he is the head of the spiritual hierarchy, and he actually embodies in his being the love of God.
Yeah, and he has said that that love, unconditional love that he embodies, he is connected to each of us through that love, because it streams from him to us, to each and every one of us, and connects with us in our hearts. And so he often has said in messages that he's given that we can see him in our hearts. That's where we can find him.
You know, I just want to say, Sabina, that to those who tuned in to hear about 9/11, what we're doing is laying the background for the Ageless Wisdom approach view of the events of 9/11 and the events that followed. And so what we're doing is just laying a little foundational work here so that you see where we're coming from when we talk about the Ageless Wisdom view of 9/11. So please be patient and hang in there. Now, the Lord Maitreya made his own body. He made his own physical body. The masters are in the desert and mountainous regions of the world where they don't have to deal with smog and noise pollution. They can just be focused on their work in supporting humanity and supporting the planet in the plan of evolution. But he needs to make a body to come and appear to us, because about every 2,000 years, we get a great teacher. The last one was the great teacher, Jesus. And now he made his own body. He's indestructible. So he doesn't need to eat or sleep. He can't be killed. He can appear in several places at once because the masters control energy. He represents the expectation of all of the world's major religions. Each major religion is expecting their great teacher to come forward now or very soon. And he comes to fulfill all of those prophecies in one being. He'll be with us for the next 2,000 years on the planet for the entire age of Aquarius. He is waiting to come forward until it's the best time to come forward.
Right.
He can only come forward once. So he needs to make it count for all it can. He wants to pick a time when he can have the attention of most of humanity. And he's also got to work with all those energies, cosmic energies and others that I was talking about earlier, to pick the right time. But it will be very soon. My best guess is not official at all. But Sabina, my best guess is within the next 5 years, probably a little less than that. We will see him on our planet amongst us. Very exciting time to be alive.
It sure is. It's so much change. And we like to just mention briefly his priorities, because they tie in with what we're going to talk about today about 9/11. And these priorities are absolutely fundamental. Since the Ageless Wisdom teaches that we're all divine, and we all share that divinity, we all have the same needs. I mean, we already know that we all have the same needs. You don't need to know anything about the Ageless Wisdom teachings to know that. Everyone needs to eat every day. We all need clean water. We need housing and shelter, healthcare. We do need education. So all of these are fundamental. And this is how the masters see it, that this is the basic, like the first thing that we need to be doing is making sure that everybody has these fundamental needs met. Until we're doing that, we can't really proceed to much else. And so the current state of the world is really like a demonstration of what ensues when you're not making sure that everybody has their basic needs met. So now let's jump right into 9/11. What is the Ageless Wisdom perspective on this disaster? Because the masters do have a perspective on this. Benjamin Krem, as we mentioned earlier, was our source of information in this current time on these teachings. And he was a disciple of one of the masters of wisdom and received or was in telepathic communication with his master. And so therefore, his master was able to convey through Benjamin Krem information, perspective, ideas, inspiration on the world these days and specific events as well, like 9/11. And so what we're going to talk about now is what Benjamin Krem's master has said specifically about this disaster. And this master often speaks in the plural and says we. So we know that he's speaking for the whole group of masters.
Right, and these appeared in the magazine, Share International magazine, an international monthly magazine that's worldwide. It's published in many languages and is available for the general public to order. And it talks about the masters, about the ageless wisdom, and how it relates to the events that are currently happening on the planet. So that's where this information comes from, is Share International magazine. Benjamin Krem was the chief editor of this magazine until he passed away.
And so the very first thing that his master said after 9/11 was, or sorry, was this right? This was right before, I think. No, this was right after. Yeah. He said that a period of crisis has descended on the world. And indeed, that was the case. The attacks of 9/11 shook the whole world. And of course, people in various parts of the world had been experiencing this level of crisis or upheaval through going through military coups, revolutions, wars. So it's not that this was the first time that there was large-scale destruction or loss of human life. But the fact that it took place within the United States, I think, shook the world. It certainly shook the United States because nobody thought this was possible. That, for example, there would be a military coup or that the United States or other countries would bomb a part of the world outside the borders of the US. That was considered normal, perhaps. But that something should happen within the borders of the United States, that was definitely not considered possible. And so this attack was absolutely shocking on so many levels. And it did begin to, it sort of opened an international dialogue because all the countries who thought they were safe, as in we are a safe country, began to realize, oh, well, maybe we're not safe. And so there was a new sense of, oh dear, looking to each other, looking to your neighbors to try to band together. So this is what the master is talking about, a period of crisis. And that it would bring the nations together in a new way is very profound, because that is really what we need.
And that period of crisis continues with the coronavirus pandemic. But right now we're talking about 9/11. And yes, Sabina said it well. The attack on the United States that killed thousands of people is absolute proof that all nations in the world are vulnerable, not just a few. And that changes the view, or should change the view, of how we see the world.
Right. And now, addressing specifically 9/11, the master went on to say that we should, or we ought to, this was the suggestion, advice, abstain from desperate vengeance and open the door to dialogue. And of course, that's the hardest thing to do when you've just been hit by cruelty, by destruction, by violence. You don't want to talk. You want to hit back. And that's normal. That's a natural human reaction. But now we've been talking about evolution and the evolution of consciousness. And so it's very hard to think about this at such a moment. It's probably impossible for many of us. But with time, you can begin to see a way in order to think, okay, why did that happen? Why did that person do that? But what the masters are suggesting is that vengeance doesn't help to resolve the problem. Because if someone behaves in a violent and destructive way, of course, you want to contain that and you want to stop it. So you have to do that. But this suggestion to open the door to dialogue, we believe that this is profound and very important, as difficult as it may be to consider. And he goes on to say that,
we didn't do.
right, that maybe what we need to do is try to understand that there are many in the world who feel a sense of grievance, and who are upset, are angry. And this is something that I think was basically impossible for the leaders of the United States to think about or to encounter in any way. And it was probably impossible for many Americans as well to think about this. But we have seen over time, so it's 20 years now, and we've been seeing in the run up to this 20th anniversary, just over the last few weeks, if you've been reading the news, and of course we all have, you'll have seen that there are many writing now in the media who are talking about the fact that a new approach is required, and that we need to start thinking about this in a different way, because we see that this kind of attack continues. That wasn't the last one. It was perhaps the first of its type. There's never been anything of such a scale, on such a massive scale since then. But, just recently in Afghanistan, we had another suicide bomber outside the airport, the Kabul airport, as people were massing there trying to leave the country. So we're seeing that this way of behaving, excuse me, of taking the lives of innocents and your own in an act that's so terrible, we're seeing that this hasn't stopped, in fact.
The masters are saying that we need to take a broader view of terrorism, that we need to look at the separation and the anger and the despair in the East, and the lack of justice in the East, and that this leads to fanatical beliefs and to fanatical actions, and that what the masters are suggesting is that we dialogue with them, probably through the United Nations, but that the West dialogue with these terrorists to try and understand what their needs are, and to listen with our hearts instead of our missiles, and to try and help satisfy some of their needs, not with military, but working through the UN to try and bring more justice to that region of the world. Now, this doesn't happen overnight, but that's how you stop terrorism. You stop terrorism by sharing, by helping. And when they see that you want to help, they're less likely to attack you. And the masters are saying that this should have been the approach, and could have been the approach, and should be in the future to such other terrorist actions. And there's more that they suggest, but this is part of it.
And so, just as a background to this approach, we all know that there are millions of people who are living on less than $1 a day. We know that there are people in situations that we wouldn't want to imagine, in terms of the level of poverty, the level of desperation to survive from day to day, to provide for your children, no hope for the future, living in conditions that are absolutely miserable.
We talked earlier about the inner reality being that we are all divine, that were all sacred, but the systems that we built, the educational system, the healthcare system, the political system, the financial system, all of those systems are aimed at the wrong principles. They're not aimed at being divine. And that's a big failing of our current world.
Yeah, these systems are built on competition, division, separatism, inequality, and they
Totally.
create more inequality, more division, more competition.
Absolutely.
So they're absolutely destructive, these systems, and they lead to a level of desperation that we feel, and the masters indicate, are linked to these acts. And as we said before, the teaching of the Ageless Wisdom is that we are all divine, and this inner reality is something that we share. We all have it. It's who we are at the most fundamental level. And so the ways in which we live, our systems, our political and economic systems, above all, need to be rebuilt so that this fundamental fact can exist, so that people can live as that self that they are. You can't possibly be experiencing yourself in any kind of reasonable, balanced way if you're desperate to find food for your children. The stress, if you think about daily stress, I mean, stress is a topic for all of us, and we're living in the most safe and most privileged parts of the world. And we experience stress, but what kind of stress is a person going through who is trying to just get enough food every day, day after day? It's relentless. So that is something that our systems, political and economic, they can serve to allow people to have their basic needs met. And it's incumbent on us to make that happen. So yeah, this is just a repeat of saying that, right? And so we want to go now to the idea of justice, because we've talked briefly, I think I've said at some point, you know, when someone commits an act of this type of destruction, of course, you want to contain it. You have to stop it from going further. And so when we talk about security and therefore freedom, the masters say that there can't be any real security or freedom for any of us unless there's justice for all of us. And in some ways, this almost sounds like what we've been hearing with the coronavirus, you know, that none of us are safe until all of us are safe.
Right.
It's very similar. There's a parallel there.
Freedom alone isn't enough. You need justice with it. And it's those two that will make society, give us a chance to grow in society.
And so the masters, definitely are in favor of the rule of law, and that the perpetrators of, well, of all crimes, but specifically this crime, need to be brought to justice. But killing them outright or attacking in a warlike way, that's not the same thing. The rule of law is something that we all have to obey. Otherwise, it's not the rule of law. And so the desire for revenge, so it compounds itself. You know, if you hit me and then I hit you back, then you're going to want to hit me back, and then you know, we're just stuck basically. We can't escape from it. It's like a never-ending kind of a cycle. So yes, this is absolutely.
The International Court of Justice is located in The Hague in Holland. It's a real court. And the intention of establishing that was to apply the rule of law to international criminals, and to openly have a trial where the evidence is presented and the defense is presented, and in doing so, to show that real justice is taking place here. It's not some knee-jerk reaction to get revenge, but rather that we're applying the rule of law to the situation to get a just outcome instead of revenge.
Right. There's a big difference there. Yeah. And so they go on to say that although this is a sad and terrible event, this catastrophe, it will in the future have a positive effect because it shows that no nation is invulnerable. All of us are vulnerable, and that therefore we can't operate in isolation. We have to reach out to each other. There's no other way to move forward.
We
And
can't
I think
ignore the rest. Yeah, we can't ignore the rest of the world.
that's right. And I think that that's something that's been difficult, really, to think about, but also interestingly, technology has made a big difference, an enormous difference. If you look at how the growth of the internet, if you think back to 2001, we had email and the internet, but it was all quite new at that point. And the level of sharing of thoughts, ideas, experiences that we're now accustomed to through social media, through all types of media, on a daily basis, on a minute by minute basis, that really wasn't part of life at that time. And I feel that this kind of interconnectedness, this digital interconnectedness, has opened us up to each other globally, so that we're much more aware of what people on the other side of the world are doing. We know what's taking place on the streets of Myanmar. We know what's happening in Russia. We know what's happening in Ghana. I mean, we have access to this information on a level we never did. And so there is a process taking place of a growth in interconnectedness across the world.
The next step is not only to know that it's happening, but to care that it's happening, to try and reach out, to try and help others.
And so sharing, the fundamental message that the masters want to convey to us is that it's only through sharing, and they're talking about not just sharing of ideas, but sharing of the resources of the world, what we need for our physical survival. This sharing is necessary. It's the essential first step in order to ensure peace. And that's because as long as I'm suffering and I see that you have what you need, you even have a nice life, and I don't, how am I going to feel? I may try to apply the teachings of my religion or my faith, which tells me to not envy, to not covet or want what someone else has. And I can make a masterful effort to do that. But how am I going to feel when I see my child suffering while your child has everything? Over time, that it's not possible to expect people to not feel angry about that level of injustice or that level of inequality. And so that's really on a very simple level why the masters say that sharing is so fundamental to our continued survival.
Maitreya and the masters, when they talk about sharing, it's important that you know that they're not talking about individuals giving up their life savings and handing it off to others. That's not the kind of sharing they're talking about. They're talking about nations sharing their excess production with other nations that need it, and thus establishing, satisfying the needs of basically everybody on the planet at some point. And that's the kind of sharing they're talking about. Now, individuals can obviously share as much as they want. But remember, nobody's going to ever be forced, the masters will never force humanity to do anything. They will make suggestions. They're teachers. They will make suggestions. They will teach us why that suggestion is viable, why it's probably going to work. And then we have our free will. We can choose to follow their suggestions or not. Everybody will have to make that decision for themselves. So the masters won't force anybody to share or force any nations to share. But when they talk about sharing, that's what they're talking about. Nations sharing their excess production and their excess resources that they don't need.
And as that takes place, we will see that these reactions of hate and envy will diminish and disappear as people's needs are met. And this is something that the masters say, and I trust that they know what they're talking about. And also, intuitively, I get it. It just makes sense. It's very, very simple. It's not hard to understand. And so that's why for the masters, sharing is the key. And that is Maitreya's fundamental message to us
Right.
at this time is sharing.
He said it's the only thing you haven't tried yet.
That's right.
So let's try it.
That's right.
Now here's how the dominoes fall when sharing starts. When the world shares so that everybody's needs are met, then there's justice. So without sharing, there can be no justice. When there's justice, people start to trust each other. Nations start to trust each other. And that trust establishes peace. So without justice, there can be no peace. And without peace, this planet has no future. We're going to tear it up. We're going to burn it up. We're going to blow it up. And then life on this planet will have to start over. Billions of years, we will go back. And this planet will have to start over. Can you imagine how badly that's going to upset the plan, not only for our planet, but for our solar system? We're part of the solar system. The solar system has a plan too. There's a plan for every aspect of life in cosmos. And so setting back this planet billions of years in evolution would have a tremendous effect, much bigger than we could even comprehend. It would affect our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy. So we don't want to go there. And Maitreya and the masters come to help make sure we don't, that we establish sharing, that we establish justice, that establishes trust, and that the trust creates peace on this planet so that we have a long, 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 long future ahead of us that's more brilliant and wonderful and joyful and peaceful and loving than we can even imagine. Because one of God's great laws is the law of balance, the law of equilibrium. And what that law says is that when it's really, really bad, the opposite has to happen. It's got to get really, really good. And that's what we're looking forward to.
And so we've talked about justice at the level of the rule of law, and we've talked about justice at the level of the fundamental living conditions of all people on the earth. And both are necessary. You need to have both in order to ensure a safe and secure world for everybody. And what we'd like to do now to finish up is talk about what do we feel and what do the masters say should have been the response to 9/11 in terms of the actions taken after it happened.
Or not taken.
Or not taken, right.
Yeah.
Right. And this is something that I think probably it wasn't really possible to talk about this perhaps in the early years, but I think now we can. And so what the masters say is that when evil strikes, when bad things happen, the best defense is detachment. So what is detachment? What does that mean exactly? It really refers to not taking action. Now, of course, you will take action to protect anyone who needs protection. But detachment here refers to standing back and not trying to influence events in the sense of you're not trying to produce a particular outcome in reaction to what has happened.
Detachment is a very difficult concept for people to grasp. And you're right, it's about not taking a knee-jerk reaction action. Detachment isn't about not caring. And
No.
It isn't about hating people or not caring if they live or die. Detachment is about not getting involved in something that will ultimately hurt other people. Detachment is about I forgot what I was going to say. I lost it. But detachment's a tough one because it doesn't mean you don't care and it doesn't mean you're not involved. I know what I was going to say. Detachment means don't personalize it. Don't personalize what happened so that you react on a personal level. Observe, care, and then act from a detached standpoint, from an objective rather than subjective standpoint.
Now, we see in the Christian teaching, in the New Testament, the teaching on forgiveness, I remember as a child, I never understood that. Turn the other cheek. You know, if someone does you wrong, turn the other cheek. I used to think, what? Like, be a victim? What, so they can do it again? It never made sense to me. But you know, with time and a bit of learning, I've come to understand that that teaching is talking about is detachment, in fact. And it simply means to step back. I think that's the simplest way I can explain it, or that I think of it in it. That's as stepping back, just taking a step back. And why? Because there's something called the law of karma. And this is well known in the East, but in the West, we don't think of it much, although with more New Age types of thought, it's becoming more familiar to people. But the law of karma, really what it is it's a fundamental law that exists, and we know it as a very simple kind of law at the physical level, that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So we know that. But the law of karma refers to, on all levels, that there's this process taking place to create equilibrium or balance. So whatever happens will be righted. That is, the balance will be brought into reality by this law, the law of karma. And one of the things that we learn in the Ageless Wisdom teachings is that there are lords of karma, masters whose work is to ensure that this takes place. Now, we don't see them doing it, so it's not in front of our eyes. We're not watching it happen. And in addition, the Ageless Wisdom teaching also tells us that we don't just live once, we live many, many times, hundreds of thousands of times. So the idea of reincarnation, that's part of the Ageless Wisdom teaching. What it means is that according to this teaching, karma, the law of karma, will right the wrongs that have taken place. However, you may not see that happening now in the next near future, or maybe not even in your lifetime, because it may happen in a future life of yours, or of the person who committed the wrong. So that's why vengeance is the desire to right the wrong now, right now, so I can see that it's been righted. But the law of karma and the Ageless Wisdom teaching tells us, no, it's not your job to do that. You are not required to do it. In fact, if you do that, you're simply creating more imbalance, because then the action you've taken, for example, if you strike out at somebody, that action then creates a karma that also has to be balanced. So it's just a continuing cycle.
The law of cause and effect, simply stated. For every effect, there's a cause. And that's why getting even doesn't get even. Because when you get even, now that person owes you more, according to the law of karma, the law of cause and effect. You're going to get it back somehow, some way, at some time. Now, we never know the timing of the law of cause and effect, but I mean, this law determines our lives from moment to moment to moment to moment. If you don't want people to cut you off in traffic, then don't cut anybody off. Because if you do, sure enough, it's going to happen to you. If you're in a waiting long line, waiting to get into it, if you will let somebody into that line, somebody sure enough is going to stop and let you in. That's how it happens in daily little events all day long, every week, every month, every year of our lives. Cause and effect takes place. And so getting even, the best way to get even is to just let the lords of karma take care of it, because the law of cause and effect is going to get them even. Hopefully, what the law of karma hopes is that when it's applied, they will learn from it. Not just that they'll get it back, that they'll get the revenge, but that they'll get it in a way that they can learn from it. And so that's the hope of the law of karma. And we're just better off to let karma happen and not try to attack or get revenge. And that's what this slide is about.
That's
It's
right.
impartial. It doesn't make any difference what the problem was, how big or little it was. The law of karma will work to restore balance. It's impartial. It's administered totally impartially. It's neutral, just like the law of gravity is neutral. You don't think about the law of gravity, whether it's good or bad or anything. You don't. You just accept it. You trust that it's going to work. Well, that's the same thing we need to do with karma, with the law of cause and effect, is trust that it will work. Trust that it's a law that never fails to be applied to every action, large or small. And so the right reaction is to detach and trust that the law of karma will take care of the balance for that act. Now, that's a tough one, but as you evolve, as you grow and learn, life gets more difficult, not easier, because you're now capable of handling bigger problems. And as our capacity to handle and solve issues grows, then we get a chance to exercise it. So here it is, defense and detachment. Go ahead, Sabina.
No, what you're saying it all. Basically, I just wanted to add that when you think about this, it really makes sense that if all life is divine, if each of us is a divine being and we all share that divinity, then what you were saying about how the law of karma is neutral or impartial, it makes perfect sense, because not one of us can be a favorite, like seen as somehow better, or
Right.
some of us are the good guys and some of us are the bad guys.
Okay, I love this line. Leave the great law to fight his battle for him. Man, that says it all right there.
Yeah,
That's from Share International Magazine.
that's right. And so as you were talking about, not cutting people off in traffic and just what the good that you do, you will receive it.
Right.
That's harmlessness.
Yes.
And that's when you come into correct relation with this law, the law of karma, also known as the law of cause and effect. And it's so basic to our lives that, it's, in a way, if you're thinking, oh, I have problems, what should I do? One very simple step you can take is just start thinking this way, and look at everything in terms of the law of karma and harmlessness. And it's amazing how many things start to clear up when you do that.
We literally create our future through the law of cause and effect by our actions. And so once the masters come and teach this to humanity in a way that it really sinks in, and they will, people don't realize how powerful these masters are. They can touch us in ways inside that we've never been touched before, beautiful ways. And once people come to realize the law of cause and effect and what a huge role it plays in our day-to-day lives and in our future, people will start to act more harmlessly. You don't have to love everybody, just don't hurt anybody. That would be a huge event. Imagine this planet if nobody on the planet hurt anybody. I mean, it would be totally transformed with it. And that's without the love. That's just harmlessness.
Yeah.
So harmlessness is huge and it's key, and we're all going to learn it.
That's right. We're all in the process of learning it. We're
right.
constantly growing and evolving. It's a fundamental part of being alive, whether you want to or not. It's taking place, in fact. Yeah. And so just to return to what we were talking about earlier, sharing the world's resources.
Yes.
Well, we have a question from one of our listeners. How can we establish a secure world if not everyone understands the law of karma? Well, and that's sort of how we want to end right now before we go to the meditation, is to talk about establishing a secure world. And that is here really through sharing what we've been talking about. If we make sure everybody has what they need to live, to provide for their children, to have hope for the future, to know that there is more that they can expect from life, that's how we'll create a secure world. That's how we'll create a world in which nobody feels the need to attack or harm another.
One of the greatest lies that we're told, many of us, is that we are not our brother's keeper. Yes, we are. Remember, when you become aware that you're a living soul, you start looking for ways to serve, looking for ways to help. And that's what we're here for. We're here to serve each other. It's by serving each other that we serve God. And so taking care of each other is part of our job, making sure that other people are okay. We're okay, so let's help other people be okay. And that's what Maitreya says. He says, look at what your brother needs, because we're all brothers and sisters of one God, one humanity, different colors, all that, different nations, but brothers and sisters. Take your brother's need as the measure for your action. If they have they need a lot of help, give a lot of help. If they just need a little bit, satisfy that need, and then look for somebody else. That's what we're coming to. And that's what Maitreya says will solve the problems of the world. Now, a lot of this will be done through the United Nations. The United Nations will become a very important part of solving the world's needs, and it will become much less politicized. The politics that doesn't work in the United Nations is the Security Council. Those large nations, the wealthy nations that have the right to veto what the rest of the world says. That needs to disappear, and it will. Our information is that it will, and that the General Assembly will become the soundboard, the sounding board for all the nations to get up, to air their grievances, to tell everybody what their problems are, and then to discuss possible solutions. That's how this is all going to be resolved. To that person who asked that question, is that we're going to start working through the United Nations. We're going to reach out through them with our hearts to try and help others. And when that happens, you create peace. And when peace happens, then lots of wonderful things can follow. See, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is why Maitreya is starting with the real basic stuff: education, healthcare, food, housing, and nature. Because until those basic needs are met, like Sabina said earlier, somebody who's searching for firewood all day so they can feed their family isn't worried about spirituality or worried about harmlessness or even has room to think about it. We don't have room to think about evolving when our basic needs aren't met. So the first step, Maitreya says, is get those basic needs met. And the way to do that is by sharing. And in doing so, you will also create peace. Now, it sounds like a huge job, and I'm sure that's why the person asked that question. But here's the answer right in front of us on the screen.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful message, really.
Be not
Be not
dismayed by the
dismayed.
immensity of the task. Be simple and heartfelt. There's that heart again. Heartfelt in all you do. And in time, it's not going to happen overnight, right, Sabina? But in time, all will be renewed. Now, we won't see all of it in our lifetime, but we're here to get the ball rolling. That's what I'm convinced of. We're here to start this process. And some of the things will happen very quickly. Benjamin Krem said that once Maitreya comes forward, within 2 years, there'll be no one starving anymore in the world. So some things we're going to see quite quickly. Other things we'll see in our next lifetime.
Yeah. So I hope I come back really soon.
Yes.
Right. And, we can see already in young people levels of awareness, of consciousness, and an approach to life that really
Absolutely.
demonstrates
Absolutely.
this evolutionary process. We can see that the world's moving ahead.
And I love what Maitreya says: be simple in all you do. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. And that's what these young people are doing, isn't it, Sabina? I mean, they're just saying, okay, let me just lay it out like it is.
Yeah.
What's her name that spoke in front of the United Nations?
Greta Thunberg?
Yeah. She just laid it out. Said, here it is, plain and simple. And that's Maitreya is suggesting that exact approach. Speak from your heart and be simple in all that you do, and it will all be renewed. What a great, great quote.
Yeah, it is. Well, and now it's time for us to also be renewed through meditation. So we're going to go ahead to the part of our show where we talk about this meditation. And we just briefly put up some links, but they're also in the chat where you can get more information. There are 4 books that are available for free download, so you can start reading right away. The one on the left you can see is called The Ageless Wisdom Teaching. It's a very slim book, very small. It lays it out in a very simple way. Wonderful to read.
And it has a nice glossary at the end so that you can understand some of the ageless wisdom terms that are used that you might not be familiar with. So it's really, really a great little text to read.
Yeah, it is. And we briefly did mention this magazine, Share International. The articles from Benjamin Crem's master that we were quoting from were published first in this magazine. You can subscribe to it easily from the website share-international.org. There's no advertising, and it seeks to bring together the Ageless Wisdom teachings and current events, similarly to what we were doing today. And so now we're going to go to meditation. This meditation is available to everybody. It doesn't conflict with any other practice you might have. It will in fact complement whatever else you're doing. And it's open to everyone over the age of 12. The only real restriction that we know of is if you have a pacemaker, you shouldn't do it because the energies are fairly strong. But other than that, it's open to everybody. It's a group meditation, and you don't need to believe in anything. Sometimes people think because we've been talking about the masters and Maitreya that, oh, to do that meditation, I have to believe in what they were talking about. No, you don't, because this meditation just works regardless. It has nothing to do with beliefs. It is energy. When we do this meditation, we join in groups of 3 or more. 3 is the smallest number. And what we do is we connect, we basically make ourselves available so that energies which are streaming in to the earth all the time, very potent energies that help stimulate all life and help us to grow, that these energies, which some of them are very, very high frequency energies, they go through our chakras, our energy centers, and then out into the world. And the masters of wisdom, whom we've been talking about, they are part of the process. So when you do transmission meditation, you're actually working with the masters to help them in one of their tasks, which is distributing these energies.
That's the biggest difference in transmission meditation, is that in normal meditation, the Ageless Wisdom says you can picture your soul as a multi-pointed white light about 6 inches above the top of your head, connected to your mind and your heart by threads, golden threads. Normal meditation, we're receiving energy from our soul through our chakras. But in transmission meditation, we're not. We're receiving energy from the masters, the senior members of the spiritual kingdom, and they're blasting this energy through our chakras and then out into the world to help change the world for the better. And so we make ourselves available to be used in service by the masters to help change the world. So it's a huge form of service that combines 2 yogas, karma yoga and laya yoga, the yoga of service and the yoga of the growth of the chakras. You can't possibly have this tremendous energy going through your chakras and out into the world without receiving tremendous spiritual growth. Benjamin Crem said that in 1 year of focused transmission meditation, regular meditation, you can receive the spiritual growth of about 20 years of any other meditation. That's how powerful it is, and that's why it's so powerful. It comes from the masters. So we say the great invocation and let the masters know where we are and that we're ready to start, and then the masters flow that energy. They know exactly how much energy to give each one of us so that it won't hurt our chakras, because they see our light. They see the light of the chakras. And so they know exactly how much energy to pass through each one of our chakras out into the world. And you don't want to send it anywhere because you don't know where it's needed. Just let the masters send it. We just stay focused here, don't we, Sabina?
That's right. And when we talk about it being a group meditation, before the pandemic, people would meet each other in someone's home, in a bookshop, at the library, in a yoga center, to do this meditation together. Since the pandemic, people have been doing it through Zoom or other ways of connecting over the
Right.
internet. And it works. And so we've put up some links. John, our chat show host, has put it up in the chat. So you can connect if you'd like to start trying this meditation. You can do it most nights of the week. There's a link for a Zoom connection to do it with other people. And we invite you to join in. And we'll do 30 minutes now. And of course, if you like it, just keep meditating after we sign off. We'll stay online for 30 minutes.
We're not promising anything, but a lot of people have received healings doing transmission meditation, and I'm one of them. So it's very powerful. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to set my timer for 30 minutes, and we haven't talked about how we start the meditation. We say this invocation, this mantra. It's called the Great Invocation, and it's a beautiful, beautiful text. We say it together aloud, and that's a signal to the masters that we're ready to start. We're actually invoking it. We're calling it forth. And so we'll do that now. One of us will say it out loud, the other will mute out, and then wherever you are, please join us in saying it. And once you finish saying it, the instructions are simply to hold your attention right here at the spot between your eyebrows. This is where your ajna center is, one of the chakras. And that is the center generally where you should hold your attention when you're meditating. And it's a very simple way to stay aligned with these energies and connected to these energies. If you notice that your attention wanders, and it very often will do, and you'll suddenly realize you're thinking about what you have to do tomorrow, then just bring your attention back to the Ajna center by saying Om silently, mentally, not with your voice. And that mantra, Om, will automatically bring your attention back to this point.
Right.
It's something
So
you can also do in your daily life, in fact. Yeah.
right. So you want to go, oh, so you let the O vibrate and then the M vibrate, but you don't say it out loud because that's a very low vibration. You think Om, that's a very high vibration. And that will just, with practice, will just snap your attention back to the Ajna center between your eyebrows, at the top of the bridge of the nose, between your eyebrows. That's the Ajna center. That's the chakra you focus on to do this and most other meditations. And so you want to keep your attention high. It will drop. You'll notice yourself looking at the floor. Then you know it's dropped. You need to bring your attention back up. Just think Om maybe twice, and it'll bring it back up. So it'd be my pleasure to say this, if that's okay with you.
Great. I'd love that. Yes.
Okay. So just keep your attention here. And when you start thinking about what you got to do afterwards, just think Om and bring it back. See, the mind is going to think, and that's its job. The brain is going to think, and you can't stop it. But what the Om does is it raises you to that quiet, still place above the thinking mind, so that the thinking mind is now like a movie that you're not paying any attention to. It's still running, but you're up above it in that quiet, still place where the Om takes you. Okay. Now this is a invocation is a mantra form. So mantras have a rhythm to them, and the sounds create the invocation. So typically we close our eyes, but if you want to read it aloud for yourself while we're doing it, you certainly may. We pause in between each verse because there's a visualization. And if you get the free book called Transmission Meditation, if you download that, it describes the visualizations you can do after each verse. So we'll get started now. Sit up straight so your chakras are aligned. Head up. And begin. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men, let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Go into your meditation. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
That was transmission meditation. Yes.
Yeah, and you might have felt the energy. A lot of people feel the energy, and some of us don't feel it much, but either way, it's happening. And you might want to contact a couple friends and read the book, look the book over, and start a group. It's very easy to do. 3 people make a group, and you can connect mentally or on Zoom and start your own transmission group. The suggestion is try to work your way up to doing an hour, at least an hour of meditation to really contribute service to the world each time. Most groups do it once a week. Some do it twice a week. But pick a time and a day of the week and a time that fits for everyone. And then the masters will be able to anticipate when your group is going to meet and when you're going to say the great invocation. And then the masters will start sending their energy through your group out into the world. It's a wonderful form of service.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And if this information resonates for you, please share it widely. We'd like to thank our tech crew, John in Montgomery, Alabama, and Cielito in Seattle, Washington.
Absolutely.
And What in the World will be back on October 9th to talk about Maitreya's priorities and universal basic income. But before that, on September 25th, if you're interested, you can tune in to a webinar that will be at the same time as this program usually is. It's Maitreya's priorities for the new civilization. And this is part of the webinar series, the Ageless Wisdom Teachings, the key to understanding the modern world. And I think, Dick, you're going to be on that webinar. Is that right?
I will be part of that panel. Yes. Looking forward to it.
Yes. So please do join us then. Well, us, that is, join the webinar then. And I'll be back on October 9th. Thanks, everybody. And stay safe. See you then.
Have a good day.
Recording stopped.
Okay.